Hi there. Welcome to Raven's Reads. I'm Raven.
My name is Charles.
And today we have another episode of The Daily Stoic with Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
Let's get started.
Yeah.
When good men do nothing.
Yeah.
Often, injustice lies in what you aren't doing, not only in what you are doing. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 9.5. History abounds with evidence that humanity is capable of doing evil, not only actively, but passively. In some of our most shameful moments, from slavery to the Holocaust, to segregation, to the murder of Kitty Genovese, guilt wasn't limited to the perpetrators, but to ordinary citizens who, for a multitude of reasons, declined to get involved. It's that old line, all evil needs to prevail is for good men to do nothing. It's not enough to just not do evil. You must also be a force for good in the world as best as you can. Wow. It's short, but there's a lot to unpack in this one.
A lot.
It's a lot.
Short but very, very powerful.
So, if you haven't heard of Kitty Genovese, what is he talking about?
Okay, so I think the story of Kitty Genovese, I encountered it when I was studying social psychology. And the story basically is a lady who is walking home at night, past midnight, and a gentleman happens to encounter her, and for no reason, he decides to stab her. And he must have stabbed her over 20 times during that incident. And what is more interesting is that at the time, the neighbors, as Kitty Genovese was calling for help, the neighbors came to stand in their windows, and nobody took any initiative. Nobody took an action to either call 911, to come down, to intervene or whatever. They just stood in their windows, looked on, and this situation was so terrible that this gentleman, after having stabbed her, went away for a while, came back and found the girl lying down again, and he raped her on top of that after everything that he had done to her. And it just goes to show the passivity of these people, the onlookers, which is what led to the professor, Professor Zimbardo, coming up or propounding the theory called bystander effect. So when evil will always triumph when good men choose to do nothing, sadly.
I think it's like the bystander effect. When you're basically in a crowd of people and you see something happening, you're all waiting for someone to do something, but you don't want to be the one to do something first.
Exactly.
It's almost like there's an invisible line between you and whatever incident is going on, and no one's ready to cross it. But if that one person does cross it, then others will probably join in too.
That's true. So in that case, what Professor Zimbardo, recommended that is that if you are the victim in that incident, who is, caught up in that situation where everybody is just looking on without intervening, what you have to do as the victim is you have to pick a face from the onlookers or the bystanders and make eye contact with that face and kind of place a responsibility, an obligation on that face that, hey, I need you to be my savior. So once you are able to establish that eye contact with somebody within the onlookers, eventually it kind of pushes the person to, take the initiative to come to your aid rather than just, suffer whatever you are suffering. And
I wish it weren't the case. I wish people would just sometimes help even without.
It's not that easy though, because people are always trying to be careful, right?
That's true.
People don't want to get, caught up in something that,
Then they can become a victim.
Exactly, right? And even as we are talking about Kitty, so it doesn't always happen at this individual level. Sometimes it happens at a societal level, at a national level, even at a global level, based on what groups of people are doing, what governments are, decisions governments are taking and all of that, right? And in that case, I can cite the example of the Holocaust, right? So during the Holocaust, there was this clergyman who lived at the time. His name is Martin Niemöller. I hope I get the name right. And he's recorded to have made a profound statement, which said, it's not going to be in the way that he arranged it, but he said, when they came for the socialist, he didn't speak up because he wasn't a socialist. When they came for the communists, he didn't speak up because he wasn't a communist. When they came for the Catholics, he didn't speak up because he wasn't a Catholic. When they came for the Jews, still he didn't speak up because he wasn't a Jew. So when they came for him, there was nobody there to speak for him, to speak on his behalf, right? Because eventually this man got himself also imprisoned in one of the concentration camps of Hitler.
Wow.
And all he had to do the entire time while others were being attacked was to speak up, to use his influence. And I'm sure that could have changed maybe Hitler's, ideas at the time or his ways at the time and saved the lives of these people. But sadly, that's not the story. Yeah. Yeah. And I like the way, Ryan puts it. It's not enough to not be the culprit. Sometimes you have to be the one intervening to end the situation. Yeah.
For sure. Wow. It does make me think too, now back to the terrorism attacks of September 11. And there were 4 planes that were used as missiles, basically, targeting different buildings in the United States. And one of those planes ended up in a field in Pennsylvania. It didn't reach its target because passengers didn't sit by and they stepped forward and they prevented that plane from killing other civilians at another building target. Meanwhile, they all lost their lives. But that made a big difference in the total number of casualties on that, that fateful day back in 2001. But yeah, I think as a female, I don't want to get involved in situations necessarily.
I wouldn't say as a female.
For me personally, as a female, I think of my own personal security and safety.
I wouldn't bring in gender though.
Maybe
as an individual.
If I was a young man, maybe I'll feel more brave.
No, really. I would disagree with you on that.
Do you feel brave?
I think it's about taking the responsibility as an individual, because there are females who have saved,
That's true.
situations. There are males who have been there and have just been bystanders.
That's true.
Right? So I wouldn't make it about gender. I would rather make it personal. You personally don't want to do it.
It's not that I don't want to do it, but I think the fear overtakes me.
It's okay.
So I'm not sure if, hopefully, I would have the courage to step forward and help prevent something terrible from happening to someone. And I won't let the bystander effect take control and paralyze me. But for me, I think it's just maybe how I've been brought up and just that personal safety is such a big priority of mine that I don't want to get involved in situations. But I do think that in my mind, I imagine that if I was a witness to something, that I would step forward and whether I physically get involved or phone the police and try to get help that way, I think I would get involved. I like to think I would.
I think that is the tricky part of it. And Professor Zimbardo's experiment, when he studied the bystander effect, showed it. Because when he studied the bystander effect, he used some students who were in the seminary who were going to do a presentation on that day. And on the day, they encountered a man who was lying down. And I think basically what it came down to is it doesn't matter what people are going to do, whether it is good things or bad things. So these seminary students were supposed to go make a presentation on the Good Samaritan. They passed by the man because they were pressed for time. This man was crying for help. But before the study, when he surveyed, most of the students said
they would help.
But when
actually had the opportunity.
When it actually happened. So I think that's the point of this message, right? Or that's the point of this video, that we have to put it in our consciousness that when something is happening, there is a tendency that I wouldn't intervene, but I'm going to make an effort to intervene. once you step out every day with that consciousness, it makes a huge difference. But we can't just assume and think that maybe I will step out. No, you are more likely not to step out, and that has been proven by research.
All right, so I'm gonna watch this video over a few times and remind myself of that little segment you just said. I'm gonna reread that page and try to really get it in my mind that if I see something, I'm gonna do something, and hopefully, if something does happen, when I end up being a witness to that, I do step forward because it's now in my awareness. It is in my consciousness,
Exactly.
and I've already decided that I'm gonna help, regardless of the situation. That I'm gonna step forward. I'm gonna do something. So, okay, it's not so passive. I gotta be active.
Yeah. I think the final thing that I would add is, like, having been here, I know there is a lot of campaign about Black Lives Matter, and oftentimes people just say that I'm not racist, and the challenge that those people are being challenged with is that it's not enough to say you are not racist. Be anti-racist. Be against racism. So if something is happening to other people that you are not necessarily one of those, persecuting or the one of those putting that sort of burden on those people, it's not enough to say that, oh, I'm not one of those creating the problem. You have to be part of the solution. You have to step out and say that I'm going to make a difference.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do something that helps those who are suffering. And it goes a long way.
Awesome.
That's a way good men can do something to prevent evil from triumphing.
Yeah,
right?
that's big. Yeah, it's not just exactly wrapping it up there. It's not just not doing bad, but you have to actually do good to counteract the bad that is being done. Not just being neutral. So let's keep that in mind. Seriously, let's keep that in mind and just actively remember this and make it part of our consciousness and take action when it's needed and when appropriate. So, wow, that's a good one.
I enjoyed it. It's very insightful.
For sure, absolutely. And hopefully we can prevent major things from happening again in the future. Major, large-scale events, terrible events. So, well, it's been another episode of the Daily Stoic with Ravens Reads. So I hope you've enjoyed. Please share your thoughts in the comments and make sure you like and share this video with your friends and others who can benefit from hearing from us and learning from the Daily Stoic.
Do something. Be a good man. Do something. Yeah.
Until next time, this has been Ravens Reads. Birds fly, readers are fly. See you next time.
Bye.